United States sprinter Erriyon Knighton, 20, has been given the green light to compete at the Paris Olympics following a close call with a doping ban. Knighton, who had been provisionally suspended in April after testing positive for a metabolite of trenbolone in March, was exonerated by an independent arbitrator who concluded that the substance likely entered his system through contaminated meat. The United States Anti-Doping Agency, USADA, announced that despite the positive test, Knighton was not at fault. USADA Chief Executive Travis Tiggart stated, "Justice was served," emphasizing the athlete's lack of negligence. After the hearing, the arbitrator determined that Knighton's positive test was more likely than not caused by consuming meat contaminated with trenbolone, which is a known livestock growth promoter that is used legally in beef cattle produced in and exported to the United States, said USADA in its ruling. Knighton tested positive despite any fault or negligence, so he will not face a period of ineligibility. Since the sample was collected out of competition, there are no competitive results to disqualify. As required under the rules, Knighton was provisionally suspended on April 12, 2024, and following this legal proceeding, his provisional suspension has been lifted effective immediately and he is rightfully allowed to compete following this legal process.
World champion of what?
World champion of what?
I can drop a world lead, I don't even like running. You gotta run fast just to go and get some money. I'm Noah Lies K, you know how I'm coming. I ain't going to no Olympics, I ain't running, I ain't jumping. I can make 100,000 at the crib being funny.
Well, at least we thought he was clear. The World Anti-Doping Agency, who oversees USADA, the United States Doping Agency, as well as the AIU, said, wait, this case doesn't make sense. We get it, he's a top athlete in you guys' country, this and that. But there's no way scientifically that you can prove that a person can eat some food and then test positive for an anabolic steroid like trenbolone. He would have had to eat at least 1,000 pounds of the oxtails that were in question, which his receipt from the restaurant somehow that he still had showed that that wasn't the case. He only had one plate. So they felt like this was a cover-up and a setup by USADA, and they wanted to step in because clearly this was some form of corruption. So after being cleared last year and being able to compete at the Olympics, right after the Olympics, his case was taken back into court. And he was just in court on June 23rd, 2025, which was approximately 2 weeks ago. And this is the audio from a video that I made 2 weeks ago, the day after his court case.
Erriyon Knighton was in court yesterday. We've seen him entered into hella meets this year, overseas, in the United States, world relays, all types of meets. He has pulled out of every single meet this year. And a lot of people were wondering why. Last year, right before the Olympic trials, USADA, the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency, put out the sanction that Erriyon Knighton had failed to test for trenbolone. And their claims was he got it from contaminated oxtails, and they did a thorough investigation, and their investigation concluded just that. So he was able to run. Despite the science saying things like you have had to eat over 1,000 pounds of oxtails, which is just physically incapable or physically impossible to even have the small amount that he did have in, but clearly it was injected. That's what the people from the Court of Arbitration of Sports are saying. And since the USADA dropped the case, they decided to pick it up because the Chinese, they pressed the issue.
In an article put out by ESPN literally today says, United States sprinter Erriyon Knighton was in court Monday to defend his claim he was contaminated in a positive doping test case that risked a ban from the next World Championships. A two-time Olympic finalist in the 200 meters and just 21 years old, Knighton was cleared to run at the Paris Summer Games last year only after an American tribunal ruled he was not at fault for the positive test for trenbolone, a steroid used in livestock farming. WADA and Track and Field's AIU had challenged the ruling in combined appeals to the Court of Arbitration for Sports. The Court of Arbitration of Sports has scheduled an appeal hearing for 2 days, and it said a verdict is likely within several weeks. So the hearing is today and yesterday, and they should have a verdict in several weeks. It says the U.S. National Championship starts July 31st in Eugene, Oregon. They are trials to pick the U.S. team for Worlds in Tokyo that starts September 13th.
Knighton's attorney, Howard Jacobs, suggests last year Knighton could have been collateral damage and ongoing feud between WADA, USADA, fueled by how a case of alleged contamination of Chinese sprinters was handled by the global watchdog. USADA prosecuted Knighton's original case after he tested positive in March last year and accepted a no-fault ruling based on an explanation of contamination by the oxtails from a bakery in Central Florida. What they should have did, which they probably did, is went up there and ordered more oxtails to see if somebody would test positive, which more than likely they probably did do. And they still let it slide. Clearly, that was a cover-up. Every time someone tests positive, it's always a food contamination cover-up. And that's just the bottom line. But what do y'all think? Do y'all think that the Court of Arbitration of Sports will find Erriyon Knighton guilty and suspend him for 4 years? Or y'all think they're going to let him off the hook?
And now the USA Championships are in 2.5 weeks' time. And we supposed to have Erriyon Knighton's verdict from the Court of Sport of Arbitration sometime before then. So here within the next few days or next week and a half or so, we should know if he's guilty or innocent, from them at least. Then that's going to really determine and dictate the future of Erriyon Knighton in this sport. Now, more than likely, he is just collateral damage. But to win in this sport, or to even be a factor in this sport, to make finals in this sport, you have to be willing to do things that are unethical and against the rules. And when you have the backing of certain companies and they have the financial pockets in which they do, you're deemed a tad bit more safe than everybody else. So that could be the reason why we didn't hear about Erriyon Knighton's case from USADA, or they didn't even drop the sanction. It was just, we didn't hear about it. When we did hear about it, it was a guy, he's not guilty. And that was it. And that was all. They didn't drop any of the lab results. They didn't drop any of the evidence or the data that they collected. It was just word of mouth, and we just had to believe what they said. And clearly, WADA and the AIU weren't buying what they were selling. But so it is. We shall know within the next 2 weeks if Erriyon Knighton will be exonerated and allowed to run at the USA Championships for a spot to make the World Championship team, in which he hasn't missed a team since he was 17 years old and a junior in high school, or will that be the end of Erriyon Knighton for the foreseeable future? But y'all let me know what y'all think down below in the comments. Do y'all think that Erriyon Knighton will get off and be able to run at the championships? Do y'all think that he should get off? Or do y'all think he should be suspended? Or just give me all of your thoughts down below in the comments. Till next time,